moved up with Piedras in Aurora in 35 years ago. And over the years, I've put sculpture along the streets, and so a lot of people have said they've grown up with my sculpture, and it used to scare them. And my intent was not to scare anyone. My intent was to create unusual sculpture. And I call my sculpture surreal. Also, you can call it abstract figurative. I'm into figurative art because I believe, we all have bodies and we relate to the figure. Artists paint people, they paint animals, and they paint sceneries. I'm kind of critical of the big abstract pieces that are around the city now because they just fill space. They don't really talk to us. They're just things. If you talk about art, like what is art? Art is a lot of things. Art is a telephone pole. Art is a parking meter. Art is a building. I think the creative act really is mostly when one person sits down and creates something out of nothing, and they lose their mind goes into another sphere, goes somewhere else. Raul was talking about his work, that he fills a canvas. I start with a form, but my work is intuitive. In other words, I don't start with a drawing. I start with a form, and I put clay on the form, and I work it just as gut. It's intuitive. In some ways, it's primitive, but over the years, I think I've developed. What is that? In some ways, I think I've developed sort of a sophistication. This piece, if you look at it, it has a date of 93 on it. This was made in 1993. I've been making sculpture since I returned to El Paso in 1980. I grew up here. I went to Mesita School. I went to El Paso High. I went to Texas Western. I graduated from UTEP when it was Texas Western. I went in the Peace Corps, and I was in Africa for a while. I lived in Europe. I lived in Belgium for about 5 years with a group of cartoonists in a cartoonist community. I studied literature, and I wanted to. I knew what great literature was, and so I wanted to be a writer. And the problem was I tried to write great literature, so it wasn't really free-flowing. And when I got into the visual arts, I had no preconceptions. And so my art was fresh. I think it was something that was not, it wasn't molded by teachers. These drawings along the wall here were done like 30, 40 years ago. I'm in my 70s. A young man on his way up, or on his way down, I'm not sure. I did the drawings. I started out writing, and then I got into photography. And I was living in a commune in New York City, and there was a guy doing pen and ink drawings, and he handed me the pen once, and I just liked the way the line moved. And I got into doing little tiny drawings. Over the years, I did about 500 of these drawings. And they've been in my files for years. And when I got back to El Paso, I had taken a sculpture class in Philadelphia. I've been a librarian over the years. I did a sculpture class in the Philadelphia College of Art, a night course, and I got into sculpture. I liked the process. Sculpture's a process. It's a lot of work. You start with a form, and then you create your form, and then you create a mold, and from the mold you cast it, and it's from a positive to a negative to a positive to a negative back to a positive. Sculpture is very hard. I mean, it's not like a piece of paper. It's not like the drawings I did. I did these drawings probably in a half hour.
Yeah, the technical stuff is involved.
It's real technical. And I guess I like the challenge of sculpture. And I liked modeling in clay. It's playing with mud. And so
taking from that to this, though, to have these sculptures, there's so many processes.
It's a process. Over the years, I cast my sculpture in Juarez. There's an art foundry there. So I could be at the foundry in half an hour. It's right across the border. And I probably made about 150 different sculptures. And a good many of them are in my house. And you all are welcome to visit anytime. Just give me a call ahead of time and I'll show you around. I'd like the work to be in hands and people buy the work. I sell a piece now and then, but I've become the greatest collector. Sculpture's hard to sell. I mean, art is hard to sell. That's why I made these little pictures here. I thought, you know, little pictures, $20. The bigger
They're
pictures,
beautiful.
$30. Thank you, Jennifer. And what happened was I took, I've been back in El Paso 35 years, so I produced, like I said, about 150 sculptures. And recently I decided I really don't need more sculpture, you know. And I'm tired of hauling it from show to show, and maybe I'll sell one piece or two pieces, and then I haul it all back. I'm not a big, strong guy, and some of these pieces are 500 pounds, some of them are 1,000 pounds. So I did a book. I'm going to show you my book. Actually, when I got back to El Paso, I did a book called El Paso, the Whole Review. And
I still have my original.
And this was done in the early 80s. And I took photographs of El Paso. I drove around the streets of El Paso on Sunday mornings and photographed outside the front windshield while I was driving, like down the highway, nobody on the streets. And then I drew pictures on the photographs. I always had a dark room. I've had a dark room for years and years. And I did this book called El Paso, a Overview. And my idea really was to go around the country and do photographs of all the skylines and all the major cities. And I got through several of the East Coast cities, but I didn't do the rest of the country. But I did El Paso, and I self-published this book. And it's in about 150 art libraries around the country. So I'm going to go back. I'm jumping around. I hope you all are following me.
Yay! Smart enough.
So the pictures, I decided I don't need more sculptures, so I decided, I wanted to promote my sculpture, so I did a book called El Paso, a Overview. And, well, the book was El Paso, a Overview. I decided to do a book about my sculpture to promote my sculpture. So about 3 years ago, I did a book called Gods for Future Religions, and I had to learn Photoshop because I wanted my images to float in the book. So in learning Photoshop, I realized I could go back to my pen and ink drawings from years ago, and I went into my files, and the pictures on the wall here are colored with Photoshop. So they're photographs of pen and ink drawings that are colored with Photoshop.
It's beautiful.
And I like the colors. I like the pixelation in these pictures.
Me too.
They're real free-flowing images. They're all very, very original. The original drawings are the ones on the far wall there, the black and whites. Those were the actual drawings that I did years and years ago. And these other ones are photographs of the drawings and then colored. So if anybody's interested in buying any, I did them because I thought, hey, you know, people might not buy my sculpture for thousands of dollars, but $20, $30, you know, a couple hamburgers is $20. So if anybody wants, you know, I got plenty of pictures there. Please buy my pictures.
Yeah.
And then I did a book. called Gods for Future Religions about my sculpture, and I'll tell you why they're gods for future religions. I'm an atheist, and they're like, depending on where you look in the internet, there are 3,000 to 5,000 gods in the world, and everybody thinks their god is the right one, and I think they're all full of shit. So, I mean, we're the gods, you know, and we're here on this earth, and we have to appreciate it. And afterlife, good luck. Great story, great fairy tales. Anyway, what I did with the book was, there's a guy named Carl Jung, a psychologist, who lived at the same time as Freud. Freud thought everything was sexual in life, and Carl Jung felt that there was a universal creative unconscious. Our imaginations are limited, so every culture in the world has created some form of God or another. And there's the mother god, the father god, the child god, the soldier god. So I took my sculptures and I put them I created a mythology, and I call it. And so in the book here, I talk about each of my sculptures as one form of God or another, and I also tell anecdotes about myself in the book. I spent a couple of years working on this book. The book is $15. Anybody wants to buy one, I'd love to sell it.
And how you have the history and you've got the chops. You're here. You're a big artist here in this town, and thank you for your bravery.
In a little pond. Okay. Yeah, I'm famous on my block.
Love you.
Yeah, there are a million artists, and you know, and every artist creates from their heart. Not everyone. A lot of them are copyists, and you know, wherever the art comes from. Anyway, it's a real competitive world. And I have some sculptures around. I have a big sculpture in a museum in Baltimore called the American Visionary Art Museum. You know, there are different areas. There are all kinds of labels for art. There's a million different kinds of art. There's all different kinds of art. You know, there's impressionist art, realist art, and I identify with something called outsider art. You know, there's tramp art, there's prison art, there's children's art, visionary art. There's a museum in Baltimore that's really interesting. It's called the American Visionary Art Museum, and it's people that they think have a vision that they're very original, and they have an 8-foot sculpture of mine called the Free Thinker.
Awesome.
I have a sculpture in the museum downtown. You know, a piece in front of the public library.
Yay!
Yay!
Congratulations.
Jennifer's my cheerleader.
I am.
Okay. Thanks. And
It's okay. Love you.
And I've kind of been silent around El Paso for several years. I've been dragging my sculpture to different cities in the Southwest. And I decided a couple years ago, I'm in El Paso, I'm going to show my work here. So I put more sculpture on the street here, on Piedras. So anybody who's driven Piedras Street knows my house and knows my sculpture.
Aurora.
And I've made an attempt to meet. I've met a lot of people like through this venue. These people are great here. And I've been doing the punk rock flea market. And I've met a lot of young artists in town. There are a lot of creative people here. And El Paso's becoming a more vital place. And it's exciting. It's exciting. And, I wish we had more times with Juarez, because Juarez is a wonderful place.
And you're the daddy of a lot of the freedom that we have in El Paso in art. Thank you.
And I think Jennifer just complimented me. I think I've had some inspiration. I've given some inspiration to people here that they know that art can be a lot of things. And people call my sculptures gargoyles. They call them for a while I was called a devil worshiper in my house, and I always said, hey, I don't believe in shit. You're the devil worshiper. You know?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. Vote for Barney. Okay. Barney who? Republican son. No. Okay, so anybody have any questions? I've covered a lot of, I've jumped around and covered a lot of territory.
I'll ask you a question. How I've known you since 1977, 78.
Right.
And I've seen your work develop and grow. You've always had a true voice to the whole Barron self that you are. Now that you're older, and I'm asking it as an older lady, where do you see yourself going in your arts?
You mean as a man in his 70s?
No, I'm talking about now imagery, but also technology, also just the state of El Paso, and the state of the world in marketing art. You take it wherever you want to go, Guy.
Thanks.
I gave you a bunch. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. I gave you a bunch. Pick one. Be happy.
Yeah, I think my art is extremely original. I was in Boston, and I went to the Boston Contemporary Art Museum, and I saw a guy who had a wall of pictures as I've displayed them here. And the guy was from San Francisco, and I thought, God, my work is more interesting than that. And so I started working on these, and I brought the museum director from the museum to my house, and I said, hey, why don't you show these in your museum? And all he could talk about was he wanted a Picasso. So, people have preconceptions of what's, I took these pictures. Now the El Paso overview, there are pictures of El Paso with drawings on them, and actually they're the ones that sell the best up there.
Yeah, they're really, at this point, the El Paso overview, people need to buy it. You young people need to buy it because it's a documentation of how El Paso's changed and how an outsider artist viewed it and was brave enough to say what he wanted to say in his personal way, but it really documents what's happened in El Paso.
Well, actually, some of these photographs, the city has changed, and they are historic, some of these photographs.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did reliefs. You can see some of the reliefs on the wall here. I did them out of cement.
They're gorgeous.
And I painted them with, they're cement. They're not too expensive. The big sculptures are expensive. And
should be. Are they bronze?
They're bronze. I have a show in Georgetown.
And what is bronze? Bronze is a compilation of
bronze
metals.
Is 85% copper, 15% of other
and it
alloys.
takes many processes, and it takes a foundry.
Right.
These will last forever.
I always said in two-dimensional art, the framers make the money. In three-dimensional art, the foundries make the money.
Yeah, but these will last forever.
If they're not melted down.
They're not going anywhere.
Right.
So, one of the things that has been a continuing conversation with you and I, because a lot of people that you mentioned, more people than usual are seeing your work as opposed to being in a gallery because it's a cafe.
Well,
so a lot of questions are, what's your inspiration as far as the sculptures, kind of the sexual hybridity that's going on, the gender?
Eric asked Raul on the other side, he said to Raul, you fill all the space, and I fill all the space. It's called the negative space in art. And I don't have any negative space. I work the piece until there's no place else to work. And I do faces within faces. I do tongues sticking out, balls on the tongue.
And you can take it in two ways because
it's humorous. I think you see it as humorous.
It is humor, but it's vitality. It's vitality. It's talking about life on life and happiness and.
Well, some people say my work is grotesque. Some people say it's humorous.
I thought that they were each of these individual objects are consuming themselves in some weird way because there's like this contradiction between, again, the sexuality, the different textures, the different forms that are you kind of like pushing all into one.
And I just use my hands. It's just a model with my hands.
How what I would want from you is forever and always for you to be challenging. And you have always done that. That is what you're made of. And I want you to continue being challenging. Because that is what art is about.
Well, anyway. Thank you all for being here.